All right, so let's get right into it. If you're a .NET developer, you know the drill, right? You spend all this time crafting the perfect entity framework core model. And then the real work starts, the work of turning that model into a full-blown API. But what if that second part, the tedious part, could be almost completely automatic? Let's take a look.
I mean, we've all been there. You're staring at a blank file, getting ready to write yet another controller. Another set of DTOs, data transfer objects, to shape your data just right for the client. And, of course, another chunk of validation logic. It's all necessary plumbing, sure, but man, is it repetitive. It just pulls you away from building the stuff that actually makes your app special.
And this slide, wow, it just lays out that familiar grind perfectly. For every single entity in your model, you do this dance. Define the model, write the API controllers, create the DTOs, implement validation, and then you have to hand code all the create, read, update, and delete logic. Then you move on to the next entity, and you do it all over again. It's just a mountain of boilerplate that can really slow a project down.
But what if you could just skip most of that? Seriously, what if you could just focus on your data model, the heart of your application, and let the API kind of build itself around that design? Well, as you can probably guess, there is a better way.
And this is it. It's called ChillSharp. At its core, this is a library that just reads the EF core model you've already built and, poof, generates the API for you. And the really important part here is that this isn't about spitting out a bunch of code files you have to maintain. No, it generates the API dynamically at runtime. That means your API always stays in sync with your model without you ever lifting a finger.
So how does this magic actually work? Let's pull back the curtain and look at the core concepts. It's simpler than you might think.
Okay, so what's really incredible is how simple the foundation is. It really just boils down to 3 key pieces. First, your DB context implements an interface called iChillContext. This is basically you just telling ChillSharp where to find your models. Second, your entities inherit from a base class, ChillEntity, which gives you stuff like audit fields and lifecycle hooks right out of the box. And third, you just decorate the properties you want to show to the world with a chill property attribute. That's it. That is the entire contract.
So you've decorated your model. What's the payoff? Well, you get a whole lot more than just your basic create, read, update, delete endpoints. Let's run through some of the key features that come, as they say, batteries included.
The core engine is really the workhorse that handles all that tedious stuff for you. It automatically maps your entities to DTOs, no more manual mapping. It gives you these super useful lifecycle hooks like onCreate and onUpdate, so you can inject your own custom logic at just the right moment. And it even manages audit fields like checksum and last update user for you. I mean, that alone is a lifesaver for figuring out who changed what and when.
And this right here, this is one of the biggest time savers. ChillSharp reads your attributes and generates a machine-readable schema. Now, why does that matter? It means your client applications can dynamically learn about your API. They can figure out what entities are available, what properties they have, and even what their display names are in multiple languages. So no more manually updating your front-end forms or your documentation every single time the model changes.
Now, let's talk about something absolutely critical, security, because this is a real game changer. The old way, it involves scattering if statements and authorization checks all over your controller logic. It was a nightmare to audit and just so easy to miss something. ChillSharp flips that completely on its head. You define these clear declarative rules for users and roles, assigning permissions to entire modules, specific entities, or even down to individual properties. It's all centralized, it's easy to manage, and it follows a default deny security posture. If you don't explicitly say yes, the answer is no. And what about performance? How about this? With ChillSharp, you can load a parent entity and its entire collection of child entities in a single HTTP call. Just one. Think about that classic N+1 query problem, where you load a blog post and then have to make a separate query for every single comment. The old way could lead to dozens of database trips. Here, it's all handled cleanly and super efficiently in one single request. Okay, so this is all fantastic for our backend. It's clean, it's efficient, but an API is only useful if clients can actually talk to it, right? So how does ChillSharp handle the other half of the equation? Well, the ecosystem is surprisingly broad. There are already pre-built clients for TypeScript and Python, plus wrappers for all the big front-end frameworks like React, Angular, and Vue. And the real impact here is team autonomy. Your front-end team can just grab the tools they know and love and get started right away, without waiting for the back-end team to write a single line of data access code. And hey, if you need a client that's totally specific to your API, the workflow is just incredibly simple. You expose a standard OpenAPI document, Swagger, from your application, export it,
and then use a standard tool to generate a client. And what's the prize? Your front-end team gets a fully, strongly typed client. That means auto-completion in their editor, compile time checks, which all means way, way fewer runtime errors. It just makes development faster and so much more reliable.
So let's bring this all together. When you look at all these features, what's the big takeaway? What does this all mean for your next project?
This quote from the source material, it really just says it all. I want you to just think about that for a second. Imagine handling complex data relationships, fetching parents and all their children, and having it all mapped to clean DTOs without ever once writing a dedicated controller for it. It represents a fundamental shift in where you spend your time as a developer. You're moving from writing plumbing to actually solving business problems.
Which, brings us right back to that very first question. All that time, all that energy you spend on the repetitive grind of API boilerplate, that could be time you spend on what really matters, defining a robust, well-thought-out data model and building the business logic that makes your application truly unique. So the question is, are you ready to make that switch?